What does the future hold? What are our greatest fears? Hello, Bruce Marciano here. Welcome to Who is Jesus, our 6-episode exploration of the life and the teachings of Jesus as recorded by one of his biographers, Matthew. This is our 5th episode, and what we'll be exploring today is what Jesus taught and what he demonstrated in his life with regard to the future and our attitudes about the future. So to get things started, what might be troubling some of us today about the future?
Anything could happen at any time, in any place in the world these days, and it doesn't matter where you are, something could happen to you. So it's always in the back of your mind that either terrorism or an environmental disaster could affect you in some way.
I'm worried about the threat of terrorism. It's quite a concern at the moment, and I'm worried about how that's going to affect the world that I might bring my children into one day.
Pretty much war. It's probably my biggest fear with things that are going on at the moment with terrorism, and I don't want to lose family.
The environmental situation is a concern. It's going to deteriorate. It's hard to see it slowing down with the way the world's just consuming natural resources and everything that's going on. It's just going to be a slow progress. I don't know what's going to happen, but what do we do? You can do your part, but it's, I don't know, it's going to deteriorate, and yeah, that's a worry. That is a worry.
I've got no worries at all about the future of anything to do with us. I just look after myself. That's what I really think about, because I think our future's pretty stuffed anyway, and I can't do anything about it.
If I try and think back to how quickly this all happened, I can't. It's too painful. The trauma is too great.
Most of us remember exactly where we were and what we were doing on December 26, 2004, when we heard about the devastating tsunami in Asia. As for myself, I remember standing in front of the television that day with my mouth hanging open. I just couldn't believe the extent of the tragedy. In the blink of an eye, tens and tens of thousands of lives, entire families, gone.
There are so many people, and these are just words, hundreds and thousands of people who've lost everything. If you can imagine getting up in the morning, and we're just talking about a lady who left her husband in this area where there were beach houses and nice bungalows, shops. She hears a roar. She's gone out to get a phone card. She gets on her little motorbike, goes off, hears the roar, turns, sees this wave coming, and she just rushes up the hill because there's nothing else she can do. She just makes it. And when all the time abates, after the time and the waves, everything's abated, she goes home, she's got nothing. Nothing. What's so touching is, out of this horror, is as I talk with her and try and stay as focused as I can on what I can do to help practically, other than talking to her, is you hear her talking about, well, yes, now I've got to make my life be really worthwhile for them. For the loss of them, I would dedicate my life to their memory, and good will come of this. It's just so touching, it really is.
The future is the unknown, but most of us feel a great desire to bring certainty to our lives by knowing where we're going. We like to make plans for the future. We want to think we're in control of our destiny. So those who claim to be able to see into the future and predict what might happen always find an audience in our popular magazines because they tap into that desire. On a larger scale, we also want to know where our world is headed. In fact, it seems the greater the uncertainty and fear in our world and in our lives, the more we're driven to seek what the future holds. Interestingly enough, it was no different 2,000 years ago. Jesus' disciples asked him similar questions.
As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately.
Tell us,
They said,
when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Jesus answered,
Watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death. And you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith. And will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. But he who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come. Jesus' response was to the disciples' question about the future of their temple, the Temple of Solomon. It was the center of the Jewish nation. So Jesus predicting that the temple would be destroyed would have been absolutely devastating to them, mind-boggling. At the same time, they would have linked the destruction of the temple to the end of the world. But as history records, in 70 AD, the Roman legions marched into Jerusalem and virtually leveled the temple as well as the surrounding city. Today, the Wailing Wall in modern-day Jerusalem is all that remains of the temple. It's still regarded as a holy place by devout Jews around the world, but its Wailing Wall name speaks of the bitter history of the Jewish nation since that time. They've lived with constant terror, death, suffering for centuries. But as Jesus continued to answer his disciples' questions, it became more and more clear that he was speaking of something on a much grander scale. Indeed, the end of our physical world. For then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Christ," or "There he is," do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, there he is out in the desert, do not go out, or here he is in the inner rooms. Do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other.
When I played Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, I remember vividly when I memorized those lines and had to come to terms with what they really, really meant. The darkening of the sun, stars falling from the sky. These are very sobering images and thoughts. At the same time, Jesus said during the Last Supper, I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. How can we be joyful about the end of the world? The answer comes in what happens next. For then the sign of the Son of Man in heaven shall appear, and he shall come again in great glory.
Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. No one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a hand mill. One will be taken and the other left. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. So according to Jesus, his disciples were to watch and wait for him in a stance of readiness and vigilance, because Jesus says no one knows the hour or the day. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps, but did not take any oil with them. The wise, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, the cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, "there may not be enough for both us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the others also came. "Sir, sir," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "I tell you the truth, I don't know you." I'm walking through the ruins of Pompeii. I've just seen the remains of people literally frozen in time, caught completely unaware in the midst of everyday life. And I think of Jesus saying, "Be prepared, because it comes like a thief in the night."
How many of us live our lives just going from this entertainment to that entertainment, seeking this thrill and that thrill, following this latest trend and that latest trend. And then one day there's an automobile accident. One day the doctor says it's cancer. One day there's a tragedy. And we're faced with that day. Oh, how tragically unprepared.
Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5.
Master,
he said,
you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more.
His master replied,
Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness.
The man with the 2 talents also came.
Master,
he said,
you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more.
His master replied,
Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness.
Then the man who had received the 1 talent came.
Master,
he said,
I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you.
His master replied,
You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the banker so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more. And he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Jesus quite often answered questions in a way that was very different than anyone expected. For example, when his disciples asked him about the temple in Jerusalem, he responded by telling them about a second coming. And when they asked him when that would happen, he told them no one knows except God. So live your life as if it's today. Be watchful. Be alert. Make sure your heart is right with God. And make sure that your life is positioned in God. The story of the separation of the sheep and the goats that we looked at in the 3rd part of this series was another story Jesus told in this context. How we treat each other is part of being ready for Jesus to come back.
Jesus answered,
Most of what Jesus taught us about the future and his second coming can be found in his extended answer to the disciples' specific questions on the Mount of Olives.
But see to it that you're not alarmed.
Jesus made other references to his second coming as well. For example, there's the Last Supper, the event on which the Christian church largely bases its communion services. Note the reference to the kingdom to come.
While they were eating, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and broke it. and gave it to his disciples, saying,
"Take and eat. This is my body."
Then he took the cup, gave thanks, and offered it to them, saying,
"Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." I tell you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom.
And here's another example from Jesus' trial shortly before he was crucified.
The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus, so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared,
"And this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days.
Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus,
"Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?"
But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him,
"I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God."
"Yes, it is as you say,"
Jesus replied.
"But I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven."
Then the high priest tore his clothes and said,
"He has spoken blasphemy."
So what is the significance of the end of the world to you and me as individuals? Whether the world ends in our lifetime or not, we all have significant fears for our own lives and ultimately for death, as well as the death of those we love. The Bible overall, and specifically the story of Jesus, assure us that death is not all there is to life. We've already seen in this series how Jesus confronted suffering and death. In this moment, he proved to us that he has power over death.
And she got up.
By conquering death, Jesus shows us that he is all-powerful and that there is great hope for you and me beyond the grave. The Bible links Jesus' return to our world with a bigger resurrection and the end of death. As such, the story of Jesus' resurrection provides you and me with a powerful answer to all of our fears for the future.
After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it.
His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him, they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. For I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you.
So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them.
Greetings,
he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them,
Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me.
Jesus' teaching about the end and his second coming are a great source of hope for us today. This is especially important in a fear-filled and uncertain world. It should make a real difference to how we live, how we treat each other, and how we live hope-filled lives today. It's been an interesting and exciting exploration today, but there's a lot more to discover in our next program of Who is Jesus, so I sure hope you'll join us. As for now, thank you very much. God bless you.